Leo pushed the door open to find Ethan in the middle of his unwavering routine, a shirtless, self-styled indoor triathlon. He quickly locked the door behind him, pulling off his thick gloves and rubbing his hands together. He remarked with a grin that Ethan must be doing this on purpose, just showing off his build for his benefit. Leo squatted beside the rhythmically moving figure, saying he'd heard there was talk of a polar bear plunge to celebrate the sun's return and that Ethan should volunteer to represent the station. Ethan paid him no mind, his focus absolute, ensuring each push-up was executed with flawless form. Leo made a face and began his daily ritual of admiring the sculpted physique, followed by the customary inquiry about whether Ethan was cold. After receiving the predictable negative response, Leo declared himself aesthetically fatigued and announced his boredom, moving to the desk to check his messages. Holy crap! 3 reps shy of his daily target, Ethan was startled by Leo's shout, the sound vibrating through his eardrums. He finally looked up at him. After all, while Leo could be annoying, he almost never swore. But after the initial outburst, Leo fell silent. It wasn't until Ethan stood up, grabbing a shirt and pulling it on, that Leo finally stammered out a question of what he should do. Ethan asked him what he meant. Leo explained, his voice trembling, that he thought his goddess, his ultimate crush, might have just confessed her feelings for him. Ethan froze. Leo was rubbing his hands frantically on his thighs, admitting he'd only glanced at the message and hadn't read it carefully yet. He needed a moment to prepare himself mentally. A sharp ping from the computer cut through Leo's shaky preparations. Leo urged Ethan to look, saying there was an email for him, that he'd go get a drink of water to collect his thoughts. Ethan glanced at Leo, seeing nothing but a portrait of pure cowardice. For months, Ethan had only received 2 types of mail, spam and messages from Ava. And just yesterday, Ava had been complaining about the station cafeteria serving some bizarre concoction of sweet and sour green peppers with fried tofu, so he figured she was unlikely to write again so soon. He had no desire to check, but Leo's insistence wore him down. He sat at the computer, intending to just clear out his inbox. But when he maximized the window, his hand, resting on the mouse, stopped moving. This email had a sender's name, and although he didn't recognize the screen name with its strange symbols, it clearly wasn't junk mail. The subject line was a single word: notice. The content was just one brief line. Isla asked me to tell you, she's gone. For a long moment, Ethan couldn't place the name Isla. When the meaning of the email finally settled in, the heat generated by his workout seemed to instantly dissipate. A frigid sensation shot through him, reaching his fingertips in the space of a blink. He stared at the email for a full minute before slowly clicking the red X to close it. Ignoring Leo, who was taking deep, gulping breaths nearby, Ethan pulled on 2 more layers, mechanically zipped up a heavy parka, put on a hat and face mask, and opened the door. There was still no sun outside. He walked forward, paying no mind as the station lights faded behind him, his head bowed. The perpetually frozen snow crunched under his boots, the sound mixing with the howling wind, a rhythm beating against his numb senses. Did you finally get what you wanted? He didn't know how far he'd walked when the wind suddenly intensified. Ethan staggered, squinting at the maelstrom of snow and ice crystals dancing furiously around him. His body tilted against the gale, but as if in defiance of some unseen force, he pushed himself forward, 1 step at a time. Then his right foot found nothing but air. A sensation of weightlessness consumed him as he watched the world in his vision flip upside down. On the 17th day of the Arctic winter, Ethan realized he might finally be succumbing to what people called polar T3 syndrome. His thoughts grew sluggish. His perception of his surroundings dulled. and his emotions felt as if they had fallen into a bottomless chasm. No matter how deeply he breathed, it never felt like enough oxygen. As his head hit the ice and snow, he found himself looking up at the black, void-like sky and thinking that maybe this was what it felt like to die. In the last moment before his eyes closed, the final image he saw was of Caleb, standing there at a party that night, stammering through a toast to thank everyone. When he turned his head, Caleb was leaning back comfortably in his chair, hands loosely clasped in his lap, his head tilted slightly, watching him with a soft, knowing smile. The neon glow of the bar illuminated Caleb's eyes, and right at their center was Ethan himself. When Ethan returned, he could hear Mike's bellowing from a distance. Leo, with his sharp eyes, spotted him first and shouted his name. By the time Ethan trudged over and stood before the station chief, a torrent of fury rained down on him. Mike demanded to know if he thought the search and rescue team was getting too much sleep, gesturing angrily at the assembled crew. He roared that they were all lined up and ready to go. He repeated the standing order, no unauthorized departures from the station, and asked if Ethan was incapable of understanding simple English. He wanted to know just how long he'd been gone. Ethan coughed, clearing his raw throat, and apologized. Mike bellowed that he didn't want his damn apology. He was about to continue when he noticed the state of Ethan's gear, and his anger flared even higher. He asked if he'd actually managed to fall into a crevasse. Ethan looked down, saying nothing. Mike accused him of thinking he was invincible. Leo quickly grabbed Mike's arm, pleading with his mentor to calm down, pointing out that Ethan was back safely. He mouthed silently to Mike that Ethan was having a rough time. Mike glanced at the curious onlookers who had gathered, took a moment to compose himself, then barked at Ethan to go write an incident report. 5,000 words. A 5,000-word report was an impossible task for Ethan. He sat at the desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Leo, lying on his bunk, told him not to bother, that once Mike cooled off, a few conciliatory words would smooth everything over. Ethan sat for a while longer but produced nothing besides the title. He had no idea how to explain his actions, because he didn't understand them himself, didn't know what had caused the sudden emotional collapse. He stood up, deciding to get some sleep. As he was pulling off his shirt, he heard Leo let out a triumphant yell. With the shirt still half over his head, Ethan felt the world spin. He realized Leo had hoisted him onto his shoulders. Damn it! Ethan ripped the shirt off and swore, asking Leo if he'd lost his mind. Lifting Ethan was clearly a strain, and no sooner had the words left Ethan's mouth than they both tumbled onto the bunk. Ethan sighed, looking with complete exasperation at the man on top of him, who was still grinning like an idiot. Leo announced that his goddess had told him she loved him. He propped himself up, looking down at Ethan, his smile revealing a row of perfectly white teeth. People in love are fools. Ethan decided not to argue with a fool. He pushed at Leo's head, telling him to get up, that he didn't share a bed with other men. Lost in the haze of that three-word phrase, Leo missed the implication in Ethan's statement. He held Ethan down, grabbing his hand and placing it on his own chest. He urged Ethan to feel it, exclaiming that his heart was about to pound its way out. Ethan, unimpressed, pulled his hand back and asked if this was his first love. Leo confirmed it was. He said it was the first time anyone had ever said they loved him, especially the girl he'd been crushing on for so long. He was so happy he pounded the mattress, feeling like he was going to lose his mind, like he wanted to join those Russians in their naked run. He then asked Ethan if it had been like that for him, the first time he heard the person he loved say it. At the question, Ethan stared blankly at the ceiling, Leo's slightly grating voice buzzing in his ear. After a long moment, he finally uttered a single dry word. No. Leo didn't understand. He never told me, Ethan thought. Perhaps the disappointment on Ethan's face was too stark, because Leo, though confused, didn't dare ask any more questions. While he was still trying to figure it out, Ethan pushed him off and stood up. It wasn't until after they had both washed up and were lying in their separate bunks that Leo, after tossing and turning a few times, called out Ethan's name in the darkness. Ethan? Yeah. Leo asked cautiously if he was feeling down. Ethan didn't answer. Leo continued, pointing out that Ethan had been at the station for nearly 9 months, and that in such a confined environment, it was easy to get depressed. He himself had only been there for 5 months and was already finding it difficult. Ethan managed a small laugh, remarking that he hadn't noticed any signs of depression from Leo. Leo explained that he was just an outgoing person, but Ethan was different, quiet and reserved. He paused for a moment, then added that what Ethan had done today, wandering off alone without a word, was seriously dangerous. He recounted how Mike's eyes had turned red when the rescue team was explaining the level of risk. He begged Ethan not to do it again, offering to accompany him if he needed to get out, or at least to tell someone. Ethan promised he wouldn't, admitting that today had been different. He wanted to explain but didn't know where to begin. Fortunately, Leo was understanding. He offered a few more words of comfort, suggesting that if Ethan was still feeling bad, he should talk to the station's counselor, that it wasn't good to keep things bottled up there. Yeah. Just when Leo thought their conversation was over, Ethan suddenly asked if he and his goddess were a couple now. Leo was pleasantly surprised. Since arriving in the Arctic, he had been Ethan's roommate, and while they talked, it was always Leo who initiated. Ethan had never shown any interest in his personal life. He excitedly confirmed that they were. He felt like he was in a dream. He'd never had the courage to confess because he felt he wasn't good enough for her. And now she had confessed to him. Ethan was quiet for a couple of seconds before asking why he felt he wasn't good enough. Leo described it as the difference between a mortal and a goddess. Well, congratulations, Ethan said. He then asked what made her his goddess. Forgetting Ethan's unusual behavior, Leo launched into a passionate monologue. He said her beauty was a given, but she was also an incredibly kind person. They were classmates in college, and he just thought everything about her was perfect. He told a story about a public speaking competition where he'd frozen up on stage and forgotten his lines. She was in the audience and had just smiled at him, raising her hands to give him a gentle, encouraging round of applause. Leo went on for a long time, and Ethan listened patiently, occasionally making a sound of agreement or asking a question. Finally, Leo turned the question back on him. What about you? He observed that Ethan didn't seem to have a girlfriend, but he suspected there was someone he liked. Ethan asked how he knew. Leo explained that he'd never seen him call a girlfriend, but he often saw him lost in thought, staring at his phone for long stretches. He admitted to accidentally, truly accidentally, catching a glimpse of Ethan looking at his photo gallery once. He hadn't seen it clearly, just what looked like a profile shot. Yeah, Ethan confirmed after a moment of silence. There is someone I love very much. Leo hesitated, unsure if he should press further. But it felt like, on this particular night, Ethan had opened up to him just a little. He decided to take the chance. He asked if they had ever been together. Yes. Then are you broken up now? Lying on his side, Ethan opened his eyes and subconsciously reached for the object under his pillow. He grasped the cool, smooth card in his hand and, after a long silence, answered slowly that no, they weren't really broken up. Not together, but not broken up? Leo mulled this over for a long time, concluding there must be a long story there. He wisely chose not to pry any further, simply letting out a soft sigh and telling his unapproachable roommate that he was really curious what kind of person could capture his heart. Perhaps it was because of Leo's comment, but for the first time in a long while, Ethan dreamed of Caleb that night. It started with that look, Caleb's focused gaze on him. Then the scene shifted abruptly. Caleb had one hand fisted in the collar of his shirt, pulling him close. His eyes, hazy with drink, held a playful glint as he asked if he wanted to. Their breath was hot, mingling in the space between them, blurring all boundaries. Ethan's gaze traced the line of Caleb's eyes, his nose, and finally, his lips. His throat was tight as he managed to ask in a hoarse voice if Caleb was drunk. Caleb let out a soft laugh and leaned in even closer, making Ethan's head spin, a pleasant weakness spreading through his limbs. Caleb's voice was a low murmur. "Ethan, it's now or never." In the dream, he didn't hesitate, kissing him with all the urgency, devotion, and fire of a young man in love. A wildfire spreading inch by inch. In the darkness, the awakened Ethan pressed a hand over his own heart. On his 264th day in the Arctic, the thought of Caleb still made it beat violently. After wrapping things up at the lab, Caleb was driving home when he saw it was already 1 a.m. He yawned, rubbing his red, watery eyes as he turned the steering wheel, searching for a parking spot. That was the main drawback of this old apartment complex. Parking was a free-for-all. With more and more people buying cars over the years, the original spots were hopelessly inadequate. People squeezed their cars into any available sliver of space, and by late evening, when everyone was home, even the narrow access roads were choked with vehicles. It took Caleb a considerable effort to maneuver his car into a tight opening. When he finally got out, he felt like he'd just retaken his driver's test and passed with a perfect score. He let out a breath and felt his pockets, thinking he'd have a cigarette before going up. In his rush to get home today, he'd spent the last 2 days cooped up in the lab, his head throbbing from staring at a computer screen. The first drag of tobacco smoke brought a wave of relief. It was late. Nearly every window was dark. The humid, sultry summer night seemed to have settled into a pool of stillness, its warm, gentle current flowing into his heart. Caleb ambled slowly toward his building. He glanced over and noticed that even the stray cat that usually lingered by the rusty playground equipment was nowhere to be seen, likely curled up asleep somewhere. He didn't expect to see anyone else awake at this hour. Ethan was crouched on the low retaining wall of a small flower bed. He was wearing a black t-shirt and a black baseball cap. In front of him was the black cat with the distinct white stripe down its back. His shoulders were hunched, his head lowered as he fed the cat something. The boy and the cat seemed perfectly attuned to the vast, dark backdrop. Caleb watched the teenager gently stroke the cat's head, took a drag from his cigarette, and called out his name. "Ethan." Hearing the voice, Ethan turned. He seemed surprised to see who it was. "Caleb." He stood up, stretching his legs and hopping down from the wall. The cat, apparently startled, darted back a few steps, its eyes wide and wary as it watched the two figures. "You just getting back?" Ethan asked. He didn't move closer, but Caleb could still make out the dark bruises at the corner of his eye and lip. He frowned and walked toward him, asking why he wasn't in bed at this hour. Before Ethan could answer, Caleb used his free hand to gently cup Ethan's chin and inspect the injury, confirming his suspicion. "A fight?" Ethan tried to pull away but couldn't. He fixed his gaze on the glowing tip of the cigarette in Caleb's other hand. His lips pressed together and gave a barely perceptible nod. The black cat, having seemingly decided the newcomer was not a threat, sidled back to resume its meal of what looked like a beef stick. Up close, Caleb saw that the cut near Ethan's eye was indeed serious. It was very close to the eye itself, the skin split open. He asked if he'd had a doctor look at it, pointing out that the corner of his eye was bleeding. As he said this, he let go of Ethan's chin. Ethan immediately straightened his posture and shook his head, saying it wasn't necessary. Because Ethan had suddenly stood so tall, Caleb realized it must have been a while since he'd last seen him. The boy seemed to have shot up again. When Caleb looked at him now, his eye level only reached just above Ethan's mouth. His hair was longer, too, in need of a cut. The baseball cap pushed it down, with stray strands already brushing against his eyes. Caleb noticed a few strands touching the wound and, with a frown, brushed them away. Ethan froze at the touch, then suddenly asked why Caleb was back so late. Caleb explained he had work at the university. Ethan wanted to say that if he had work, he shouldn't have bothered driving all the way back, that it was dangerous to drive so late. Caleb continued, mentioning that the next day was the first day of school, and he'd promised Lily he'd drive her. Good thing I didn't say anything, Ethan thought, kicking at a small stone at his feet. They walked toward the building entrance, one behind the other. As they passed the dumpsters, Caleb stopped, took one last drag from his cigarette, and stubbed it out. When he looked up, he found Ethan watching him, his handsome eyes shadowed by the brim of his cap. "What is it?" Ethan shook his head without a word and followed him. Caleb told him to come inside with him, that even if he didn't want to go to a hospital, the cuts needed to be cleaned properly. He gestured to his own eye, that an infection there could be very dangerous. Ethan's hand had just found the cool metal of the key in his pocket. He looked at the apartment door across the hall and shook his head again. "Not going." Caleb assured him that his parents were already asleep. Ethan still shook his head. Caleb didn't press him, just said softly for him to wait there. He'd get him some medical supplies. Ethan stood there holding his key. The timed hallway light clicked off, plunging them into darkness, but he didn't move or make a sound to turn it back on. "Why didn't you go in?" Caleb asked, reappearing with a small bag of supplies. Then understanding dawned on him. "Is your mom home?" Ethan nodded. "First the white cream, then the green one," Caleb instructed, handing Ethan the bag. He told him there were cotton swabs inside, to use a mirror and be careful not to get anything in his eye. Ethan took the bag, the plastic crinkling in his tight grip. After a few seconds, he said thanks. Caleb looked at the boy with his head slightly bowed, his own lips moving as if to say something more, but he remained silent. Sometimes he had the disorienting feeling that Ethan was frozen in time, trapped in that one summer. Everyone else moved on, collecting the dust and light of their own lives. But he remained, perpetually silent and withdrawn, as if disconnected from everyone. The next morning, the alarm buzzed for only a second before Caleb slapped it off. He threw back the covers, shuffled to the bathroom, and started making breakfast. When he brought the plates out, he saw his sister, Lily, already dressed and sitting patiently at the table. "You're back." Lily's eyes crinkled into a smile. She asked him what time he'd gotten in. He told her around 11. Lily loved fried eggs, especially with a runny yolk. Caleb thought he'd cooked them perfectly today, so when Lily's fork went straight for the egg, for once he didn't tell her to eat something else first. She ate with obvious delight, and even the way she opened the front door was light and cheerful. But as she did, a shrill female voice cut through the morning quiet. The door to the apartment opposite theirs was wide open. From that distance, Caleb could clearly see the chaos in Ethan's living room. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and even the sofa cushions had been thrown onto the floor. "Looking for your damn keys again, are you? What is your brain made of, pig feed?" making all this racket first thing in the morning. Caleb could only hear the voice, not see the person. He was holding Lily's backpack and gently nudged her shoulder, signaling for her to keep going down the stairs. After a few steps, Lily stopped and looked back. "Come on, we'll be late," Caleb urged. Lily sighed and started down the steps again. Aunt Diane is yelling at Ethan again. Caleb's family and Ethan's were neighbors, living directly across the hall, but unfortunately, they lacked the close, friendly relationship one might expect. More accurately, in this 6-story building with its peeling paint, most residents got along reasonably well, with the sole exception of Ethan's family. And that was entirely because Ethan had a mother whose words were weapons, sharp and provocative, who had managed to offend every single family in the building. Caleb's own mother had cut off all contact after Diane had referred to Lily as a sickly little thing who'd probably die young, and her kindness toward Ethan had cooled as well. Ethan never set foot in their apartment again, nor in anyone else's. Lily could never understand it. Diane was a beautiful woman. At 40, she didn't look her age at all. She had these enviable natural gifts, so why did she have to be so cruel with her words? "You've been fighting again? Can't even get a damn word out of you. You're just like your deadbeat father." The same pathetic, broke look on your face. Hearing this, Caleb stopped on the stairs. He looked up through the railing. Having already descended a flight, he could only see a narrow sliver of the open doorway. "Caleb?" Lily called from the landing below, seeing that he hadn't followed. Suddenly, the door upstairs slammed shut with a deafening bang, silencing the woman's one-sided tirade. It was Lily's first day of high school. Before she got out of the car, Caleb, still worried, held her arm and reminded her that if they had to do any heavy cleaning for the new school year, she should talk to her teacher, and if she felt unwell, to call him or their parents immediately and not to push herself. Lily recited the instructions back to him in one breath, then turned her head and gave him an exasperated look, telling her dear brother that he and their mom had already said this 800 times and were being way too dramatic. Caleb replied that was why he'd offered to speak to her teacher directly, to avoid any issues later. Lily flatly refused, insisting she could handle it herself. Caleb nodded and let go, asking one last question: if she had her inhaler. She confirmed she did. He told her to be careful. Lily smiled, promised she would, and made a playful face at him as she closed the car door, waving goodbye. Caleb waited until he saw her walk into the school before turning the car around. Driving back toward the complex, he saw Ethan from a distance, riding a red mountain bike. The teenager had put on his school uniform and taken off his cap. The ubiquitous white earbuds were back in his ears. He was riding at high speed, leaning into the turns with his bike, creating a graceful arc. The earbud cord swung in a loop, catching a sliver of sunlight. As Caleb drove past him, he had a fleeting thought, noticing the yellow stripe on the uniform sleeve. He's a senior now. Caleb was trying to complete all his doctoral coursework in his first year, so his schedule was packed. He usually made it home at least every other week, but after this visit, he was stuck at the university for over a month. It wasn't until Lily's birthday that he finally skipped a class to come home. He bought a cake and made a special trip to a bakery near the high school to get the specific kind of candles Lily liked. As he walked along a path bordering a flower bed toward the bakery, Caleb saw a boy in a school uniform jump down from the high brick wall. The boy landed in a crouch, bounced up, and dusted off his sleeves. Unexpectedly, he looked up and his eyes met Caleb's. A senior's uniform, a familiar face. Caleb took the cigarette from his lips and looked at him with an amused expression, then glanced up at the wall. Ethan started. Then, seeing Caleb's look, He sighed in frustration. My stomach hurts. I was gonna buy some medicine. As soon as the words were out, a backpack flew over the wall and landed squarely on Ethan's shoulder. Caleb let out a short laugh, the hand holding the cigarette trembling slightly. Ethan bit his lip and looked down, feeling utterly foolish under Caleb's gaze. His only thought to get away as fast as possible. I gotta go, Caleb. With that, he quickly grabbed his backpack, stepped over the low hedge, and strode to the curb, hailing a cab and making a hasty escape. Caleb watched his hurried departure, shaking his head with a silent, gentle laugh. What's he running for? I didn't say anything. He walked a few more steps and looked up at the spot where Ethan had jumped. It was pretty high. He, for one, would have been afraid of breaking a leg. The high school had evening study sessions. Caleb texted Lily, telling her to ask her teacher for permission to leave early. He would pick her up before the session started. Lily came out beaming, carrying her small backpack. When she got home and saw the big cake and a table full of her favorite dishes, she was overjoyed. The family talked until 10 o'clock. Lily said high school was fun, the classes weren't too hard, and she had made many new friends. Before bed, Lily crept up to Caleb and held up one finger, asking if she could have just one more tiny piece of cake. Caleb personally cut a very small sliver and handed it to her. Lily reluctantly accepted the minuscule portion, not forgetting to comment on Caleb's precise knife skills. As she was eating, she saw Caleb cut another, much larger slice. He asked what time the seniors finished their evening session. Lily tilted her head, thinking, 9:50, I think. Freshmen and sophomores who live off campus can leave at 9:20. But boarders and seniors have another short study period until 9:50. Caleb nodded, carefully placing the large slice of cake on a new paper plate, sticking the fork in a clean spot. Take this over to Ethan, he said, handing the cake to Lily. He glanced at the clock and murmured to himself that he should be back by now. Lily tiptoed over and knocked on the opposite door, balancing the cake. But there was no response for a long time. She pressed her ear against the door. It was completely silent inside. Just as she was about to turn back, she heard the heavy security door at the bottom of the stairwell open. She took a couple of steps back and waited. Sure enough, she saw Ethan. But his appearance startled her. Ethan was walking up the stairs, pulling at a bandage on his arm. He was thinking that his friend Ava was completely unreliable. She had managed to turn his hand into a giant white monstrosity, complete with a bow. Ethan. Lily's eyes widened as she called his name in a small voice. Are you okay? Ethan looked up, and the first thing he saw was the strawberry cake, looking soft and inviting under the dim, yellow hallway light. It was the first time he had ever eaten cake with one of those tiny forks. Usually, at birthday parties, he either didn't eat cake or just had a symbolic bite. This time, he studied the slice seriously for a moment before picking up the small fork with his uninjured left hand. He clumsily ate it, piece by piece, even scraping the last bits of cream from the bottom of the plate, trying to make out the raised letters there. Wholesome Bakery. The next day, Ethan, with his bow-tied elbow, rode his bike all around the small town, weaving through every street and alley, but he never found a bakery called Wholesome. He found out later that Caleb had bought it in Philadelphia and brought it back with him. He had always thought that where you were or what you did didn't really matter, but that small piece of cake made him suddenly think that maybe some things were different after all. In 2008, Ethan went to college in Philadelphia. His first purchase was a small slice of strawberry cake from that same Wholesome Bakery Caleb had gone to. Caleb heard from Lily about Ethan's injury and sighed to himself, thinking that when he'd seen him earlier, he should have just grabbed him and taken him away. It might have saved him from at least one fight. He had always known Ethan wasn't exactly a model student, but he had never pictured him as a fighter. It wasn't until he saw Ethan with his own eyes, his hand bleeding as he punched someone in the face again and again, that he suddenly felt he couldn't let the boy continue down this path. That day, a friend of Caleb's had returned from a trip to California, and as it happened, a few of their old high school buddies were all in town for the weekend, so they arranged to meet up. After dinner, the group headed to a nearby pool hall. On a weekend night, the place was packed. The owner led them to a reserved table, and as Caleb's gaze swept the room, it suddenly landed on Ethan. There was a group of kids who were clearly underage, with flashy hair colors and provocative clothes, several of them with cigarettes dangling from their lips. Ethan wasn't mixed in with them. He was sitting alone in a corner, leaning back in his chair, playing on a Nintendo Switch. Except, Caleb squinted, noticing the boy was also smoking. Both of Ethan's hands were occupied with the game, and he exhaled a plume of smoke from between his lips. A girl in black hot pants walked over, smiling, and reached out. But just as her fingers were about to touch Ethan's cigarette, he moved it away. Ethan looked up, gave her a cool glance, then took the cigarette from his own lips and tapped the ash off. He's got some style. Caleb, who had witnessed this little scene, didn't know what to think. Should he be pleased that the kid from across the hall had such a strong presence? Or should he be dismayed that at such a young age, he already carried the air of a thug? With his hands in his pockets, Caleb casually strolled over. "Hey man, got a light?" The pool hall was loud, and Ethan just barely caught the words, not recognizing the voice. He didn't mind the request, but he was very annoyed by the hand that had just been placed on his shoulder. He freed one hand and impatiently fished a lighter from his pocket, passing it back without turning around. But the person behind him didn't take it, and the hand on his shoulder showed no sign of moving. Game over. He couldn't play with one hand, and the character on the screen died a brutal death. The frustration that had been simmering because of the hand on his shoulder immediately boiled over. He shot to his feet, but when he saw who was behind him, his anger instantly vanished. Ethan's voice caught in his throat before he managed to say his name. Caleb. The cigarette still in his mouth fell to the floor with a pathetic little bounce. Caleb tilted his head lazily, smiling at him under the swinging overhead light. "You were going to hit me?" Ethan's brow furrowed in frustration. "No." He bent down, picked up the cigarette, and stubbed it out on the small table next to him. His long fingers held the crushed cigarette for a long time, hesitating, until the unburnt tobacco spilled out. The scattered strands were an irritating mess. "Let's start with a cigarette then. Let me see what you're smoking." Ethan didn't move right away. He looked at Caleb, who was still smiling, unable to gauge his mood, wondering if he was angry. One of the guys Ethan was with sauntered over, raised his eyebrows at Caleb, and asked Ethan, whose expression was grim, what was going on. "It's none of your business," Ethan said, giving him a shove to send him away. As he turned back, he realized that the others, who had been engrossed in their game, had stopped playing and were now staring coldly in their direction, looking ready for a fight. Ethan felt an even deeper sense of failure. He took a step forward and offered Caleb a pack of cigarettes. Marlboro Reds. Caleb glanced at them. Classy. He unceremoniously took the pack, pulled one out, then gestured toward Ethan with a flick of his fingers. Light. This time, Ethan didn't obey. Instead of giving Caleb the lighter, he leaned in and lit the cigarette for him. As Caleb lowered his head toward the flame, Ethan stared at his face. It was the first time he had seen him this close, close enough to count his eyelashes. They were long and beautiful, especially when he blinked. Ethan didn't realize how submissive he was being until Caleb waved a hand. walked away with the pack of Marlboros, and he caught the astonished looks from his friends. It was only then that he realized he probably hadn't looked much like a tough guy just now. For the rest of the evening, Caleb toyed with the pack of cigarettes, occasionally glancing over at Ethan. Ethan spent most of his time playing his game, but whenever he went to the table to take a shot, a round of cheers would erupt. Caleb watched from the side, thinking to himself, why did I ever think Ethan had no presence? At 11 o'clock, the crowd in the pool hall had thinned out slightly. Just as Caleb was leaning over the table, aiming for the final black ball, the main door was slammed open. The 8-ball sank into the pocket. Before he could even congratulate himself, he heard a series of gasps. When he turned around, he was completely stunned. Shards of broken glass were embedded in Ethan's shoulder, and 2 groups of people were already shouting and surging toward each other. No one knew how the chaos had started. All they knew was that when they came to their senses, several chairs had been smashed, broken beer bottles were everywhere, and people were fighting with red-rimmed eyes. Caleb watched in disbelief as Ethan, his hand dripping blood, knocked one guy down, grabbed his collar, and repeatedly punched him in the face. This Ethan was a stranger to him. Violent, ruthless, merciless. None of these words matched the image Caleb had of him. He immediately started forward, but a friend stopped him. He patted his friend's shoulder and said that the kid from across the hall was in there. And the kid from across the hall was seeing red. He had been watching Caleb play pool and hadn't even heard the door slam open or his friend's S. He had been caught completely off guard when the beer bottle shattered on his shoulder. Caleb wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist, trying to pull him away, but the body in his arms kept struggling. It wasn't until Ethan's elbow slammed into Caleb's eye that Caleb grunted in pain. Only then did Ethan realize who was holding him. What happened? He asked, turning around in a panic. He saw tears streaming from Caleb's right eye, which was quickly turning red. He was incoherent, afraid to touch Caleb's eye. Let me see. Just then, the bouncers the owner had called arrived. A few tough-looking men started shouting at the rampaging teenagers, one of them banging an iron pipe on a table. He yelled for everyone to stop, threatening to beat anyone who moved. Caleb held an ice pack to his eye while he settled the damages with the owner. Ignoring his friend's offers to drive them to the hospital, he pulled Ethan into his own car. Inside the car, Caleb tossed the ice pack aside, turned on the interior light, and started the engine. My place, your place, or the hospital. Pick one. Caleb stared straight ahead, his voice calm as he added that he didn't think either of them was equipped to handle a shoulder full of glass shards. Ethan hadn't dared to breathe since getting into the car, stealing glances at Caleb's tense jawline. Anyone could see that Caleb was angry. To what degree, he didn't know, but he was definitely angry. It was the first time he had ever seen Caleb look like this. The hospital, Ethan answered quickly. At the hospital, Caleb watched with a permanent frown as the doctor cleaned Ethan's wound. Ethan, meanwhile, kept stealing glances at Caleb. Whenever their eyes met, Ethan would quickly look down in guilt. Each time he thought about how unlucky he was. He hadn't been in a fight for a while, and the one time he did, Caleb had to be there to witness it, and in such a dramatic fashion. The nurse was also chatty, nagging him as she cleaned the wound, saying things like young people shouldn't be so impulsive, and what if there's an accident, and just the other day. A boy came in with a stab wound from a fight. He almost didn't make it. His mother was crying her eyes out. With every word she spoke, Caleb's frown deepened. Ethan watched the nurse's mouth open and close, his heart sinking. After leaving the hospital, Caleb sat in the car and rolled down the window. He took out the pack of Marlboros and asked Ethan if he wanted one. Ethan, who was trying to figure out how to explain what had happened, instinctively reached out his hand. Caleb let out a short, humorless laugh. Ethan quickly pulled his hand back and shook his head. No. Caleb got out of the car and stood beside it, finishing a cigarette before getting back in. Your eye. You should put ice on it like the doctor said, Ethan said awkwardly, struggling to find the right words, his mind a blank slate. Yeah, Caleb replied, but made no move to leave. Ethan secretly clenched his fists, waiting for him to speak. Caleb did try to say something, but frankly, he had no experience with this. Both he and Lily had been well-behaved kids, never causing trouble. None of his friends were the type to solve problems with their fists, so he had never had to persuade anyone to stop fighting. And Ethan, to him, was a neighbor, a kid he had known since he was young. Caleb was 6 years older, not his parent or relative, not even really a friend. He didn't feel he had the right to discipline him, but he also didn't want to see the side of Ethan again. Ethan. Yeah, Ethan responded softly. Does it hurt? Caleb asked. Ethan shook his head. It doesn't hurt. Caleb rested his hands on the steering wheel and turned to look at the boy beside him. It was a long time before he spoke again. You're a senior now. Don't you have to study? Ethan didn't know what to say. Should he tell him his grades weren't actually that bad? Or that he hated being at school? Caleb, receiving no answer, asked another question. Have you thought about college? Ethan was taken aback. College. It was the word his teachers used most often. At the beginning of senior year, they had each been asked to write their dream college on a leaf-shaped sticky note and put it on a large paper tree on the classroom wall. A tree that held the aspirations of the entire class. Ethan hadn't written one, hadn't posted one, and had been lectured by his homeroom teacher for it. But Ethan had spent the entire lecture watching a clumsy bird outside the office window. If you don't like it here, if you don't like being at home, you can apply to a school far away. You've always missed your father and your little brother, right? You could go to school in Chicago. If you want to know about different universities, different majors, I can tell you about them. Caleb's expression finally softened. He looked at the silent, bewildered Ethan, reached out and patted his thigh twice. He asked in a gentle, persuasive tone, you have less than a year left. Why not pick a major you like, get into a college you like, and live the life you want in the future? Wouldn't that be good? A life he wanted. Ethan had, in fact, overheard his classmates talking about colleges and their myriad of majors while he was resting his head on his desk. One wanted to study medicine, but his parents said it was too tiring and difficult. Another wanted to go into finance because it paid well. Someone else's parents wanted them to study engineering, to have a marketable skill that no one could take away. The lively discussions sometimes gave Ethan the illusion that everyone, except him, was expected to have a future. Ethan wasn't good at many things, but what he was worst at was talking to people. The car was quiet, so quiet he could feel the dull, throbbing pain in his shoulder spreading, coiling around his heart. Ethan. When he didn't get an answer, Caleb called his name again, softly. Ethan looked up and met his eyes. In his limited memories, Caleb was always patient, just like now. There had been several times when Caleb would just say his name, followed by a gentle command. Speak. The car's interior light was off. The only illumination came from the streetlights filtering through the windshield. It was dim, intimate, but in that light, Caleb's face seemed incredibly clear to Ethan. His hand, resting on his leg, twitched. His index finger accidentally brushed against a tear in his jeans from the fight. The frayed fabric was soft against his fingertip. Okay. With that one simple word, Ethan answered Caleb's very complex question, neatly ending their conversation for the night. Caleb wasn't sure if his attempt at persuasion had been successful, but as he pulled up to the curb, he studied Ethan's expression. He was looking out the window, his face calm, lost in thought. He probably took some of it to heart, Caleb thought. It was nearly 2 in the morning when they got back to their building. As they walked up the stairs, Caleb was quietly repeating the nurse's instructions. Ethan nodded obediently and said good night at his door. But when he reached into his pocket, he realized his key was gone. Caleb had already unlocked his own door. He pulled the key out, turned, and saw Ethan standing there awkwardly. "You didn't bring your key?" Ethan wasn't sure if he'd forgotten it or lost it in the fight, but he nodded and said he must have. "Is your mom home?" After asking, Caleb remembered the time and shook his head. "Never mind. Just sleep at my place." Ethan had no intention of knocking. If Diane was home, waking her up now would likely result in the entire building being woken up by her shouting. But he also had no intention of staying at Caleb's. "No, it's fine. I'll just get a room at the motel down the street." "A motel?" Caleb opened his door wider and beckoned to Ethan. "Get in." Ethan still shook his head. Since it was summer, Ethan was only wearing the t-shirt they had cut one sleeve off of at the hospital. The battered black shirt, combined with the white bandage on his shoulder, made him look truly pathetic. Caleb was so tired he could barely keep his eyes open. He was weighing his options. Physically drag the injured boy inside, or continue trying to reason with him. After comparing their respective heights, he opted for the latter. "My parents won't." Caleb had just started to speak when Ethan interrupted him. His sleep-deprived mind was slow to react. "Huh?" Ethan didn't know why he did it. He looked at Caleb, whose eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, and hastily said, "Don't worry about me. You should get some rest." Then he turned and ran down the stairs without looking back. His sudden actions caught Caleb completely off guard. It was too late to shout, so he just called his name in a low voice, quickly locked his door, and chased after him. But when he got downstairs, there was no sign of Ethan in the vast darkness. The next evening, Caleb ran into Diane. She was wearing a burgundy dress and furiously kicking the apartment door with her pointed high-heeled shoes, cursing under her breath. When she saw Caleb, she let out a laugh, brought a cigarette to her lips, and exhaled a cloud of smoke. Did the little brat change the locks? Bright red nails, bright red lips, a stark white cigarette, and a wisp of smoke. In a movie, it would have been a beautifully cynical portrait of a femme fatale. A beauty. Even Caleb had to admit it. Diane possessed a kind of intimidating aura that not many women her age could pull off. For better or worse, she was unique. Caleb lowered his eyes and said politely that he didn't know. All the way down the stairs, he could still hear the loud thuds of her kicking the door, mixed with increasingly vile curses. Strangely enough, after that day, Caleb came home several more times but never saw Ethan. The apartment across the hall was as quiet as if it were uninhabited. Caleb didn't know if Ethan had a phone, so despite his worry, he had no way of contacting him. Then one morning, on his way back from the grocery store, he saw a girl. She was cautiously pressing her ear to Ethan's door, listening. When she saw Caleb, she immediately stood up straight and gave him a shy, embarrassed nod. Caleb walked over and watched her knock lightly on the door, seemingly to confirm no one was inside, before pulling out a key. He looked at her, puzzled, but after a moment's hesitation, he asked politely if she was a friend of Ethan's. The girl was startled by his sudden question. She spun around to face the man holding a bag of groceries. Yes, I am," she stammered. Then, as if remembering something, she quickly waved her hands and insisted she wasn't a thief, that she was just getting something for him. Caleb nodded, relieved, and asked what was wrong with him. The girl started to speak, then stopped abruptly, pressing her lips together tightly. After a long, she said it was nothing, just the weekend, and they were going out. A girlfriend? The phrase popped into Caleb's head and was just as quickly dismissed. A little high school romance was better than fighting. Anyway, Caleb didn't give it another thought and just nodded. Ava returned to the hospital with the things Ethan had asked for. She found him still in bed, stubbornly doing a physics worksheet with his arm in a sling. "Here's your stuff and your key." Ava handed it to him, adding a worried reminder to keep it safe this time. Ethan just grunted without looking up, telling her to put it down. A few minutes later, he finished the last problem, closed his eyes, and tossed the worksheet to Ava. Ava pulled a red pen from her pocket, graded it with a few quick slashes, then dangled the paper with its score of 85 in front of Ethan's face. "Keep trying, kid." Ethan opened his half-closed eyes, glanced at the paper, and asked Ava what her score was. Ava smiled sweetly. 96. Ethan snatched the paper back and started reviewing his mistakes in sullen silence. Ava found his competitive pout amusing. She scooted her chair closer and leaned in, smiling. "Here, let your beloved class president explain it to you." Ethan shot her a look, telling her not to push her luck. Ava was unfazed by his glare and continued to smile good-naturedly. "Hey, 85 is 85. You still have plenty of room for improvement." No one could believe that Ava and Ethan were friends. But for some strange reason, Ethan had been fiercely protective of this seemingly ordinary girl for years. There was even a rumor that he had once defended her honor by beating up several boys who had made fun of her weight, then lined them up to apologize to her one by one. Ethan hadn't missed many questions, and most of his mistakes were in chemistry and biology, in areas that required memorization. After Ava quickly went over them, she looked at Ethan, who was frowning and awkwardly trying to highlight sections in his textbook. She couldn't help but say that he must have a screw loose, asking who picks a fight like that. That morning at school, she had heard that Ethan had gotten into a massive brawl with a group from another school. The news had even reached her advanced placement class, a bubble usually insulated from such things, so it must have been a big deal. Ava, holding a stack of math worksheets, listened as a few of the more rowdy boys in her class discussed Ethan. "Dude, he took on a whole group by himself. Even though he got his ass kicked, that's still insane. That's not just looking for a fight, that's suicidal. I wonder what old Mr. Davidson will do this time. Didn't the principal want to kick him out of the AP track after his last fight? But Davidson refused? This time, I don't know. You think Davidson can still protect him? I doubt it. If his grades were really good, maybe Davidson would fight harder for him." Ava walked over to their desks with a deadpan expression and slapped the stack of papers down. 101, she announced. The boys' discussion was cut short. They stared at her, confused. Ava ignored them and walked over to Ethan's empty desk, placing another paper on it. She really wanted to read the score aloud, just so the boys next to her could hear who it was that didn't have really good grades. But she knew that some people just wouldn't get the hint. Ethan, of course, knew what people were saying about him. He even knew the parts of the story that hadn't been circulated. After that brutal fight, as he lay on a gurney in the emergency room, the guy he had been feuding with was sitting nearby, glaring at him. Ethan, tired of being stared at, told him to stop, that he thought they had settled things. His casual comment only enraged the other guy. "Are you a complete idiot? Huh?" The guy couldn't understand it. After the fight at the pool hall, Ethan's side had more or less come out on top. So why was he the one starting another fight? If anyone should have been looking for revenge, it should have been them, not him. He gritted his teeth as a nurse roughly treated his wounds, cursing. My cuts had just started to heal, and now I'm back here because of you. Don't you know the rules? You don't even give a guy a chance to breathe. Ethan was getting more and more annoyed by the constant cursing. He gave the guy a look, a humorless smile twisting his lips. I told you I'm done. I'm settling everything at once to avoid any more trouble. The other guy, sweating from the sting of the antiseptic, shot back that he wasn't done. No, I am, Ethan said, looking at the ceiling, his voice suddenly serious. I'm a senior. I need to study. The guy just stared at him, his expression one of utter shock. He seemed at a loss for words. Finally, he spat on the floor and muttered, "Damn psycho." This time, Ethan didn't use his fists to shut him up. He couldn't move anyway, and he had no desire to argue anymore. He gave him an emotionless glance and lay there in silence. And with that, the other guy finally believed him. Ethan didn't know how this story would be spun by the people he used to fight with. Maybe when they were drinking together, they would all bring up his name, mock him as a psycho, and share a laugh. But he knew that this chaotic chapter of his life, the part Caleb disapproved of, was truly over. If you wanted to fight, to put someone in their place, you could always find a reason. Today I'll get you for pissing me off. Tomorrow you'll come back for revenge. Never ends. High schoolers didn't believe in burying the hatchet. To unilaterally withdraw from this game of back-and-forth brawls, to settle old scores. You had to pay a price, including shedding blood that didn't need to be shed, and earning the title of Ethan, that complete psycho. As winter set in, the northern air became incredibly dry. One morning, while washing his face, Caleb got a nosebleed. It was an old problem. As soon as the weather turned, his nose became extremely sensitive. He stuffed some tissue up his nostrils and walked out with his head tilted back. "What's wrong with you?" Noah, who was putting on his shoes, saw Caleb's unusual posture and started to come over, concerned. But he tripped on a network cable on the floor, causing a clatter. "Be careful," Caleb said. Noah was extremely nearsighted but refused to wear his glasses for long periods, claiming they would change the shape of his eyes. Caleb had to admire his persistence. He could trip over things 8 times a day and still manage. It's nothing, just the dry air. Noah said he was heading to a company for a research project and left with his backpack. As he was leaving, Caleb tossed him a granola bar to eat on the way. An older student had asked Caleb to help mentor an undergraduate robotics team. He said the younger students had asked him several times, but he was too busy and had to ask Caleb to fill in. Caleb had just gotten dressed and was about to head over when he got a call from the student. The student explained that the whole team had gone out to eat the night before and gotten food poisoning. They were all at the clinic on 4 drips and asked if they could reschedule the mentoring session. Caleb, of course, agreed. He asked a few questions to make sure they were okay and then ended the call. With his plans suddenly canceled, and after having spent the last week pulling all-nighters for a paper he was submitting, Caleb had no desire to go to the lab. He put on some music, cleaned the dorm room, and carefully secured the loose network cable. With nothing else to do, he decided on a whim to buy a train ticket and go home. He had lent his car to a friend on Friday, thinking he would be at the university for the weekend. His mother, Sarah, was surprised to see him. "Didn't you say you weren't coming back? Have you eaten?" "Yeah, I ate. I had something to do, but it got canceled, so I came back." Sarah came to greet him, taking the bag from his hand. "What did you buy?" "A humidifier." Sarah frowned at the mention of it, but Caleb quickly cut her off. "I know we have one. This is for your room. It's been so dry lately." Sarah shot him a look and scolded him for wasting money again. Caleb just smiled, changed into his slippers, and looked around the empty apartment. Where are Dad and Lily? I sent them over to your grandma's. I just finished a deep clean. There's so much dust this time of year, and with the heat on, it's not just them, even I can't stand it. As she spoke, Sarah picked up the jacket Caleb had just taken off and pinched the sleeve in disgust. Look at this cuff, it's filthy. How? Caleb poured himself a glass of water. I just washed it. I've only worn it for 2 days. Then you definitely didn't scrub the cuffs last time. You have to use soap and scrub the cuffs and collar separately. You can't just throw it in the washing machine and expect it to get clean. I'll wash it for you again later. Caleb drank the large glass of water to quench his thirst. Hearing the washing machine running, he sighed, put his arm around Sarah's shoulder, took the offending jacket from her, and guided her toward the sofa. It's fine. I'll wash it myself when I get back. You should rest. I'm leaving tomorrow anyway. It won't be dry by then. You don't wash it properly. I'll wash it and hang it on the radiator. It'll be dry by morning. You're so busy at school. This will save you a chore. They argued for a while, but Caleb couldn't win against his mother. He watched as she took his jacket, emptied the pockets onto the coffee table, and disappeared into the bathroom. Oh, by the way, your uncle mentioned he wanted you to stop by when you got back. Your cousin Ian is a senior now and wants to apply for early admission. I remember you helped out with the early admission program at your university, right? You should go talk to him. Sarah poked her head out of the bathroom, her hands covered in soap suds. Why don't you go now? The high school is on break today, so Ian should be home. Maybe later, Caleb said, setting up the new humidifier. He yawned. I'm gonna take a nap first. I'm exhausted. Caleb wasn't someone with a lot of energy. He had a habit of taking afternoon naps, even if it was just for 15 minutes. He was sleeping fitfully when the sound of a closing door woke him. Light sleepers were like that. Even with a closed bedroom door between them, the slightest sound seemed to be amplified in his ears. Caleb? What are you doing home? Lily was surprised to see him walk out in his pajamas. She quickly stuffed the bag she was holding into the shoe cabinet. You don't want me home? Caleb pretended not to see her clumsy attempt to hide the bag and asked casually why she was back by herself. Where's Dad? Still at Grandma's, Lily said in a small voice. She bent down to change into her slippers, her short hair falling and covering half her face. When she stood up again, her cheeks were slightly flushed. Caleb stood in front of her, stared at her face for a few seconds, then suddenly reached for the cabinet door. Lily quickly pressed her hand against the door, exclaiming anxiously, "No, you can't look." Caleb saw her defensive posture and laughed. He could guess what she had bought just by counting the days. He decided to let it go. He played along with the little girl's desire for secrecy and stopped paying attention to the paper bag. After his laugh subsided, Caleb noticed Lily was wearing a pink down jacket he had never seen before. New coat? He gently turned her around. It looks good on you. The jacket was a slightly longer, A-line style, with a fluffy trim at the bottom and a small pink pom-pom on the tip of the hood. It was very cute. Lily glanced at him and mumbled a yes. Just then, Sarah came out of the bathroom. Seeing the jacket on Lily, she immediately asked if she hadn't gone to Grandma's. Did you go shopping too? Lily looked at her mother, hesitating. Sarah was also pleased with the jacket. She never minded the hassle of cleaning and liked to buy light-colored clothes for Lily, dressing her like a little princess. It's a good thing, too. It got really cold afternoon. I was worried you weren't dressed warmly enough. I was thinking of bringing you a coat, but then I thought you'd be indoors and a cab ride back wouldn't be cold, so I didn't. If you went shopping, it's good you bought one. We don't want you catching a cold. Lily nodded in agreement, took off the jacket, hung it on the coat rack, and then took off the white fleece she was wearing underneath. She glanced at Caleb, but instead of going to her room, she slowly shuffled over to the living room and sat down. Caleb looked at the pink jacket, then at Lily, who kept pretending to casually glance in his direction. He was sure something was up. Before he could think about it further, he noticed the coat rack seemed a bit empty. He pushed aside Lily's jacket and fleece and saw that the coat he had been wearing was gone. Looking around, he found that not only his coat but all the clothes he had brought back were now hanging on the radiators. Caleb didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Mom, why did you wash everything? What am I supposed to wear now?" "Just find something else," Sarah called from the kitchen. "If I wash them for you, it'll save you the trouble when you get back." Caleb had no choice. He silently hugged his mother, who had just come out with a fruit platter, took a slice of apple, and went to his room to pick out another outfit. He didn't have many clothes at home. Most of his regular rotation was at school, and he hadn't brought anything back this time. He rummaged through his closet for a while before putting together an outfit he thought was acceptable. Looking in the mirror, he had to laugh at himself. He couldn't remember when he had bought the white, preppy-style sweater. He had hardly ever worn it. Paired with a light khaki-colored duffel coat and light-wash jeans, he looked like he was trying way too hard to look young. This outfit would have been more appropriate when he was a freshman. He told his mom he was leaving, took out a bag of trash, and went out. As soon as he stepped outside the building, he was hit by a blast of cold wind. Caleb shivered and quickly pulled up his hood. Strangely, as he threw the trash into the bin, the perpetually aloof black cat actually rubbed against his leg. Caleb crouched down to look at it. The cat just tucked its head in but didn't back away. He had assumed it was hungry and looking for food, but upon closer inspection, he saw that it wasn't skinny at all. In fact, it looked a little fatter. "You're eating well." Just as he muttered this, Caleb heard the screech of bicycle brakes. He looked up and saw Ethan, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. He was only wearing a thin tracksuit. "You're not cold, dressed like that?" Caleb stood up and walked toward him with a smile. Ethan had already pulled out his earbuds the moment he saw him. "Not cold. Young and tough doesn't mean you should be reckless," Caleb said, looking at Ethan's red hands and ears. "I got frostbite on my ears when I was a kid. It was awful, and now they get cold every winter. You should get some gloves if you're riding your bike, and cover your head too." Ethan listened and nodded. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then the black cat meowed. Ethan got off his bike and put down the kickstand. "You bought food for it?" The plastic grocery bag was translucent, and Caleb could faintly make out what looked like beef sticks inside. "Yeah, he's a picky eater. I bought him cat food before, but he wouldn't touch it. He only eats these." As he spoke, Ethan started to open the bag, but perhaps because he had pulled his earbuds out too hastily, the cord had gotten tangled with the plastic bag. Ethan tried to untangle it with his cold, red fingers, but he seemed clumsy, unable to find the knot. "Let me." Caleb reached out and took the tangled mess from his hands. With a few deft movements, he separated them. Ethan took the bag back from him and crouched down without a word to feed the cat. "Are you going out?" "Yeah, to my uncle's." The cat was eating enthusiastically. Ethan, not knowing what else to say to Caleb, who was standing beside him, pretended to be engrossed in watching the small black creature eat. A hand appeared in front of him. The white earbud cord was neatly wrapped around Caleb's index and middle fingers, his other 3 fingers loosely curled. Ethan followed the hand up to look at Caleb. He was still wearing his hood and was crouching beside him, also looking at him. It was only then that Ethan belatedly realized why he thought Caleb looked particularly handsome today. He was dressed differently, younger, and the hood of his coat was large, covering half his forehead, perfectly framing his eyes and brows. The edge of the hood acted like an eyeliner, drawing attention to his eyes. And when Caleb smiled, his eyes curved. "Do you feed him every day?" Caleb suddenly asked, breaking Ethan's observation of his eyes. "Pretty much," Ethan said, looking down to hide his thoughts. "Whenever I'm back." Caleb nodded in understanding. No wonder he looked so healthy. Although Ethan was hoping the cat would take its time eating, the cat clearly didn't share his sentiment. As usual, it devoured the 2 beef sticks in no time, and before running off, it looked up at Ethan and meowed, as if placing an order for tomorrow's meal. "It's finished," Caleb said, and announced he was leaving. Ethan silently crumpled the plastic bag and tossed it into a nearby trash can. Caleb had already started walking away, his hands in his pockets, when he remembered the early admission thing. "Ethan," he called out. When he turned back, he saw that Ethan hadn't moved at all. He was standing there watching him. He didn't know if it was the twilight or the cold wind, but the look in Ethan's eyes stayed with him for many years. So much so that whenever he thought of it later, he felt a desperate urge to see the boy smile. There was no expectation in his gaze, not even a sense of waiting, just a quiet, undisturbed loneliness. He was suddenly reminded of the black cat looking up at him expectantly just a moment ago. "Have you eaten yet?" Maybe people and cats really do start to resemble each other after spending a lot of time together. The words that came out of Caleb's mouth were not what he had intended to say. He suddenly couldn't bear the thought of leaving Ethan, who was looking at him like that, alone in the deepening night. A few steps away, Ethan blinked, as if surprised by the question. "Probably not, right? Come on, my treat." Caleb saw a flicker of light in Ethan's eyes, but he still hesitated. "Weren't you going to your uncle's?" "I didn't tell them I was coming, so it's fine. We can grab a bite and I'll go over after." At that time, smartphones were just becoming popular. They couldn't just pull up an app to find a place to eat. They had to rely on their own memories of good restaurants. Caleb, afraid Ethan would be too shy, suggested a few places he thought were decent and let Ethan choose. He wanted to treat him to a nice meal, but he didn't expect Ethan to say he wanted chili. "Chili? There's a diner nearby, Old Man Willie's," Ethan said, gesturing vaguely in a direction. "It's just past the second intersection down that street." Caleb thought for a moment and remembered the diner he used to go to in high school. "Oh, that place. I haven't been there in years. Is it still open?" Ethan nodded, looking at him seriously. "Okay," Caleb said. Thinking the diner wasn't exactly close, he suggested they take a cab since he hadn't driven home. But Ethan was already walking toward his bike. He came up to Caleb and hesitated for a moment before saying it wasn't that far, offering to give him a ride. Caleb's mind, however, was on a different track. He was surprised to see that Ethan's lips were curved upwards. It was subtle, but it was definitely a smile. In that instant, the first thought that entered Caleb's mind was how easy it was to make him happy. "Okay," he said, not mentioning the cold, and indulgently agreed. But when he saw the bike, he shook his head with a smile. "There's no back seat." This time, Ethan answered quickly. "There's the crossbar." Caleb looked at the bike again and was speechless. The crossbar was slanted. He looked up, intending to objectively explain to Ethan that it would be impossible to sit on such a crossbar. But when he met the boy's hopeful gaze, he found himself, against his better judgment, smiling and saying, "Okay." As he got on the bike, Caleb took off his hood, afraid it would block Ethan's view. "Don't leave it on," Ethan said suddenly from behind him. "It's cold. Your ears will get cold." "It's fine," Caleb said, his arms on the handlebars, pushing himself forward. "It'll block your view." "It won't," Ethan said quickly. As if to explain, he added, "You're not that tall. You can wear the hood, and it won't block me." Caleb, who had already pulled his sleeves down over his hands in preparation for the ride, froze for a second. His eyes widened slightly as he turned his head to look back. Ethan, not understanding, just looked at him blankly. "Are you saying I'm short?" Caleb asked, blinking and tilting his head. Ethan finally understood Caleb's silence. He silently bit his tongue and quickly shook his head, trying to salvage the situation. "Not short. Average height." Average height? He was under 6 feet, so he wasn't tall, but as long as he wasn't standing next to a giant like Ethan, he thought his height was perfectly adequate. What kind of a comment was average height? Caleb was exasperated. He glanced at Ethan, who was looking at him with a serious expression, and then, with a sigh, he reached up and put his hood back on. "If it doesn't block, it doesn't block. At least it's warm. Let's go," Caleb instructed. "One side of your hood isn't on right." Ethan looked at Caleb, who was staring straight ahead, unmoving. He secretly reached out with 2 fingers, pinched the edge of the hood, and gave it a little tug. It was a small, subtle movement, but it seemed to pull the corners of his own mouth up into a smile as well. The advantage of being tall was having long arms and legs. Caleb, sitting in front of Ethan, didn't feel cramped at all. Even so, they had barely left the complex before Caleb was already regretting his decision. The slanted crossbar was incredibly uncomfortable. Not only did it dig into him, but he also kept sliding backward. He had to grip the handlebars tightly to keep himself stable. But he was afraid of affecting Ethan's steering, so he didn't dare put his full weight on them. The entire ride, Caleb was fighting the annoying slope of the crossbar, trying to find a stable balance. Ethan, however, seemed completely at ease, smiling the whole time, his riding smooth and steady. "Look at your hand. And you say you're not cold?" Caleb couldn't stand it anymore. He frowned and used his left hand to cover Ethan's red, frozen one. "Hey!" The handlebars wobbled, and Caleb, caught off guard, pitched forward, his hand that was covering Ethan's tightening its grip in the process. After steadying the bike, Ethan quickly looked away, but his gaze was drawn back, and then it seemed to be weighted down, fixed on the hand that was touching his. In that moment, the warmth became a tangible thing, along with the chun yurdong desire to touch him. His heart, which had leaped into his throat, never calmed down. When Ethan stopped the bike, Caleb seemed to say something to him as he got off. Ethan didn't hear it, only saw that he was smiling at him. In a daze, he remembered to reach out and steady Caleb as he dismounted. The diner had been renovated and was much cleaner and brighter than Caleb remembered. As soon as they stepped inside, the warm, fragrant air enveloped them. There weren't many customers at that time. They were scattered around the room. They chose a booth for 2, and after the waitress's recommendation, they both ordered bowls of chili. 1 classic, 1 extra spicy. No relish on the classic. Caleb was carefully wiping the table with a napkin when he heard Ethan say this. He stopped and looked up, his eyes meeting Ethan's. "Right?" Ethan asked, holding his gaze. The waitress was also waiting patiently for his answer. Under their combined scrutiny, Caleb nodded lightly, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face. After the waitress left, Caleb tossed the used napkin into a nearby trash can and asked Ethan how he knew he didn't eat relish. He couldn't remember ever telling anyone that, and in fact, he wasn't even that strict about it anymore. As a kid, he had been a picky eater, insisting on not eating certain things. But as he got older, whenever he went out to eat with his family, he had to meticulously inquire about the ingredients of every dish, checking for allergens and adding requests like no spice, no garlic, and so on. He found it to be a hassle for the waitstaff, so he had gradually dropped his own preference. It wasn't an allergy, just a matter of taste. It wasn't worth the trouble. You brought me here once before, and you didn't get relish. Ethan poured water into a glass, swirled it around to rinse it, then poured the water into another glass. He stuck both sets of silverware into the water and stirred them slowly. His movements were fluid and familiar. Caleb watched him silently, frowning in concentration, until he finally remembered when he had brought Ethan here. In that moment, a strange feeling washed over Caleb. It was something he had almost forgotten, yet Ethan remembered it so clearly. It was different back then. It had been summer. Caleb remembered he had just finished his sophomore year final exams. He wasn't on his bike, he had walked home. A group of neighborhood ladies were always gathered at the entrance to the complex, gossiping. But that day, strangely, their conversation wasn't about which supermarket had eggs on sale. Instead, it was about how the man didn't take a dime and the older one chose his mom. They sighed and lamented that the boy was foolish, short-sighted. How could he only care about money? The jumble of voices soured Caleb's good mood from finishing his exams. As he was thinking, a pristine black car passed him. Inside sat a man and a small child holding an ice cream cone, his face a mess. Caleb froze for a moment, looking in disbelief at the departing car. The younger one was taken, so the one left behind was... In the midsummer heat, the sunlight slid across the car's body. From warm to cool, then disappeared, the last thing in this small town to have touched that car. Ethan pushed a glass of water toward him. The glass next to him still held the water for rinsing. There was nowhere nearby to pour it out. The waitress brought over a steaming bowl of chili, without hot sauce, and placed it in front of Caleb. Caleb quietly asked the waitress if they could have another glass. After the new glass arrived, Caleb rinsed it, filled it with water, and handed it to Ethan. Then, lost in his memories, he stared into space for a long time. Ethan was quiet when he ate. Not that he was silent, but he didn't speak. When Caleb occasionally asked if it was too spicy or if he wanted a drink, he would respond with short phrases, one or two words, or just a shake of his head. It wasn't until Caleb brought up the early admission process and asked about his recent grades that he spoke up. Last exam, I was 109th in the class. Caleb was surprised to hear this. Ethan's grades were much better than he had expected. What was your total score? 607. Their town was small, and even at the best high school, the overall academic level wasn't very high. And their state was notoriously competitive for college admissions, with many applicants and high score requirements. In the grand scheme of the state, the class rank didn't mean much, but the total score did. Caleb thought for a moment, tapping his fork, and analyzed the situation for Ethan. With that score, you could still get into a school in Chicago, just not a top-tier one. You should really consider early admission. The school has nomination slots, and you can also self-nominate. If you want to try, I can help you with the application materials. But Ethan quickly shook his head. The noodles on his fork steamed, creating a fog between them. I'm not applying. He put down his fork, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and explained, I have a disciplinary infraction for fighting. It's useless to apply. Ethan said it casually, but Caleb found it unsettling, even a little frustrating. But at this point, there was no use in lecturing him. He just silently considered how the infraction might affect Ethan's future. Was it on his permanent record? Ethan shook his head, saying he didn't know. If it's on your permanent record, it could be a problem because that follows you. After saying this, Caleb thought that maybe it wasn't that serious. In a small-town high school, the administration wasn't always that strict. Even if they said it was an official infraction, it might not have actually been recorded. You should ask your homeroom teacher about it. See what the official status of the disciplinary action is, if there's any chance of having it removed." Ethan looked at him and, after a moment of silence, shook his head again. "It was a long time ago. The guy I fought, his dad is someone in the education department. I was blamed for everything. There's nothing to discuss." Caleb understood immediately. On one side, you had someone with connections, an insider. On the other, a problem student whose parents couldn't even be reached to come to the school. It was a clear-cut case of an easy scapegoat. Ethan was still eating his chili with gusto, as if he wasn't worried about the disciplinary action at all, or his future. Caleb sighed and stirred the chili in his own bowl, worrying on Ethan's behalf. But the subject of his concern just cheerfully urged him to hurry up and eat before it got cold. After they finished, Caleb said he would take a cab to his uncle's, but Ethan insisted on giving him a ride. Looking back at the journey there, with all its discomfort, Caleb hesitated, staring at the bicycle for a long moment. But in the end, he succumbed to the boy's eager gaze. All right. The road was even darker on the way back. As they turned onto a side street, the streetlights became a dim yellow color. The Tyndall effect made the beams of light visible, scattered quietly in the dark night sky. "It's been a long time since I've been on this road at night," Caleb said, looking up with a smile. "The streetlights are still the same." Ethan didn't understand. "What do you mean, the same? When I used to ride my bike, I would take this shortcut home every day. I don't know what it's like now, but back then, probably because it was so deserted and the atmosphere was nice, I would always see a couple of couples here. One pair would hang out on the east end, and the other on the west end, as if they had an agreement to divide the road." Caleb chuckled as he spoke. "So every day I would ride my bike past and watch them. Sometimes the guy would be giving his girlfriend a piggyback ride. Other times they would be hugging under a streetlight. It was different almost every day. Then, right before the SATs on the last day I saw them, one of the guys actually happily greeted me. Perhaps because he was talking to a teenager who was currently living through that same high school experience." Caleb felt a wave of nostalgia and suddenly remembered the amusing little story. Ethan listened to him laugh and, with a smile of his own, asked what the guy had said. Caleb deepened his voice, imitating the young man's tone. "Hey man, thanks for your hard work all this time. Good luck on the sats." Ethan let out a sudden laugh. Hearing the sound, Caleb was so surprised he turned his head, his hood slipping back. "What's so funny?" Ethan asked, confused. "Nothing. Is your sense of humor really that basic?" Ethan just smiled and didn't say anything. The truth was, he was imagining the scene in his head. Caleb on his bike, riding down this little road, watching the two couples with their daily displays of affection, and then responding to the guy's final greeting. He just thought it was all very endearing. Caleb didn't know what he was laughing about, but seeing him smile so foolishly made him want to smile too. He turned back, pulled his hood up again, and wrapped himself more tightly in his coat. In the days that followed, during his senior year, Ethan would ride his bike down this road every day after a long, exhausting day of studying. Sometimes he would race through, listening to the wind whistle past his ears. Other times he would ride slowly, weaving back and forth, tracing different paths on the pavement. But whether he was going fast or slow, it would always make him think of Caleb, who had once sat in front of him, riding down this road with him. Many years later, he would hear someone humming the tune to Claire de Lune, and the image that would immediately come to mind was the sliver of a moon from that night. The streetlights were beautiful, the new moon was beautiful. The light danced, landing on Caleb's fingertips, then flowing through the unique darkness of the night and into Ethan's eyes. And when he recalled that beautiful memory, Even a blizzard would melt into warmth, leaving a sweet aftertaste. The New Year's holiday was only 3 days long, and with final exams just around the corner, most students who lived far from campus chose not to travel. For the 2 days leading up to the break, Noah had been in a slump. Caleb went with him to the library to study, but he just saw him holding a pen, staring at his phone, lost in thought. When Caleb spoke to him, it would take him a long time to push up his glasses and respond with a vacant huh. "What's with you lately?" Caleb asked in a low voice. "Is something wrong?" Noah's lips moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he shook his head and said it was nothing. But despite his words, Caleb watched as he copied a formula that only applied under one set of conditions into a problem with a completely different set of conditions. He then went through a series of calculations and somehow managed to solve for a variable. Caleb studied his work and found the logic of his problem-solving process to be truly bizarre. Maybe this was the power of being at the top of the class. "Noah." He blinked and called Noah's name. Noah looked up at him. That variable is a given parameter in the problem, without a specific value. Noah looked at his nonsensical solution and mumbled that he'd made a mistake. "Forget it," Caleb said, finally having had enough. He stood up and patted Noah's head. "Let's go get something to eat." On the wide steps of the library entrance, Caleb put an arm around Noah's shoulder, used his other hand to lift Noah's chin, which was practically buried in his chest, and asked what his plans were for New Year's. Noah looked at him with dull eyes for a moment before slowly answering that he didn't know. Noticing him check his phone again, Caleb thought to himself, who was he waiting for a message from? Looking so lost? On a winter afternoon, the sunlight was a welcome comfort. The path from the library to the cafeteria passed by the main administration building, which had a large, open plaza in front of it, with nothing but a tall flagpole. In the summer, crossing this plaza was an ordeal. In the winter, it was a pleasure. The sun made Caleb feel lazy, and his arm on Noah's shoulder grew heavier. "You're gonna stunt my growth," Noah complained, shrugging his shoulder. "Dude, even if you started school early, you're already 21. 23, with a growth spurt," Noah retorted immediately, his earlier lethargy gone. Caleb, who had recently been subtly mocked for his height by his younger brother, found it comforting to be around Noah, who was shorter than him. He squeezed Noah's shoulder and quickly lifted his hand twice. "Fine, I won't weigh you down. If you don't have any plans for New Year's, you should just come home with me. Otherwise, you'll just be moping around by yourself for 3 days." Noah had started school early, so he was younger than most of his classmates. Maybe because of this, he seemed a little bit of a loner. It wasn't that he was antisocial, just that his words and actions often made him seem like a kid. I. Noah had just started to refuse when the phone he was clutching suddenly rang. He stopped talking, paused, then quickly raised the phone to his ear. In the span of a few seconds, Caleb watched as his face lit up, then gradually fell into shadow. At lunch, Noah poked at the broccoli on his plate and asked Caleb in a muffled voice if it was still okay for him to go home with him for New Year's. "Of course. We can leave on the afternoon of the 29th. Caleb gave him the large chicken leg from his own plate. "You get really bad motion sickness, right? We'll take the train then." Caleb didn't mention the phone call or ask why Noah had suddenly changed his mind. He got Noah's ID information and went to the train station that afternoon to buy 2 tickets. He hadn't taken the train home in a long time, ever since he got a car. Because it was a holiday, the train was packed. Noah, trailing behind Caleb, was jostled from side to side. At one point, a large bag knocked his glasses off his nose, and they almost fell to the floor. Caleb, seeing this, immediately reached back, pulled him in front, and guided him through the crowd with one hand protecting him. He settled Noah into a window seat, opened the window, and told him to let him know if he felt sick. After the train started moving, Caleb took Noah's water bottle and went to get him some hot water. But he had only taken a few steps when a female voice called his name. He turned and saw a girl in a plaid coat and a thick scarf, smiling brightly. He easily matched her face to a name in his memory. "It really is you. I thought it looked like you, but I wasn't sure." The girl waved at him. "Long time no see." Caleb nodded slightly and smiled. Chloe. Although many years had passed, Chloe hadn't changed much since middle school. Her features had just matured a little, making her even more beautiful. The people sitting with Chloe that day were also some of Caleb's middle school classmates. He learned that they had just had a small reunion in the city and were heading home together. It was only then that he remembered his friend Hank had asked him if he was free that day. This chance encounter lasted until they got off the train. Caleb was juggling a somewhat queasy Noah and making small talk with his old classmates. After they exited the station, Chloe stood on her toes, looked at the line of cars waiting, then turned and asked Caleb with a smile how they were getting home. "My dad's picking me up. We can give you guys a ride. It's cold today." Caleb smiled and politely declined. "Thanks, but my friend can't take a car. He gets really bad motion sickness." Chloe saw that the boy standing next to him did indeed look pale and didn't insist, even asking Noah with concern if he was okay. "Chloe, can you give me a ride? I'm on your way." "You are not on my way." A screech of brakes interrupted the group's friendly banter. Everyone fell silent, confused but instinctively turning to look at the handsome young man who had suddenly appeared without a word. Ethan was still in his school uniform. He had one long, lean leg, the kind Noah envied, on the ground, his eyes fixed on Caleb. "School's out?" Caleb asked with a smile, not questioning Ethan's abrupt appearance. "Yeah." Ethan, suddenly the center of attention, didn't know how to react. His gaze swept over everyone's faces before settling back on Caleb. He leaned in slightly and tapped the backpack Caleb was holding for Noah. "I'll take that for you." Just then, one of the girls finally reacted, asking Caleb with a hint of awe if he was there to pick him up. "Your little brother is so handsome." This group of old folks, who had already left college behind, couldn't help but stare at the familiar school uniform. Riding a mountain bike, his back was naturally hunched as he gripped the handlebars, the fabric of his uniform stretching over his spine, creating a slight, youthful curve. A tall, handsome boy, whose every bone and breath seemed to embody the word youth. Caleb noticed the momentary silence. He watched as Ethan, seemingly oblivious to everyone else, hung the backpack on the handlebars and continued to stare at him. Finally, Caleb laughed, turned to his friends, and said his goodbyes. Ethan rode his bike at a walking pace. Because he was going so slowly, he had to weave back and forth, sometimes using his foot to push off the ground to avoid people. Caleb, seeing that he was still only wearing a school uniform and a hoodie in this weather, said that it would take a while to walk back, and if he was cold, he should just ride ahead. Not cold. Noah, walking on Caleb's other side, had been secretly studying Ethan, from his enviable height to his handsome features. He couldn't help but ask Caleb if that was his brother. Caleb nodded. Ethan secretly squeezed the brakes a few times, his head down, tracing the cracks in the pavement with his front wheel. "He's so tall." Noah said this in a very quiet voice, and Ethan didn't hear it. But he did hear Caleb laugh, and when he looked up, he saw Caleb put an arm around Noah's shoulder and ruffle his hair. He frowned, looked down again, and started squeezing the brakes repeatedly. "Why did you come to the train station?" Caleb asked after his laugh subsided. "To pick you up," Ethan said. "I asked Lily when you were getting back." "Picking me up on a bike?" That's certainly unique. Did you need something from me? To specifically ask when he was getting back and then wait for him at the station, it probably wasn't just because he was happy about the school holiday. But Ethan, when asked, didn't answer right away. Seeing that Noah was also looking at him curiously, he pulled his hand out of his pocket and shook his head. Nothing. Really? Caleb didn't quite believe him and asked again for confirmation. Yeah. Dubiously, Caleb nodded. Then he remembered something and asked Ethan if he had a phone. I keep forgetting to ask you this every time I see you. If you have a phone, give me your number. It'll be easier to get in touch. Ethan took a couple of steps forward, turned his head toward him, and said hesitantly that he didn't have a phone right now. A phone was for contacting people, and until recently he hadn't had much need for that. He looked at Caleb. Just give me your number. That night, Caleb received 2 text messages from unknown numbers. One was from Chloe. It was a short, 2-line message telling him who she was, that she had gotten his number from Hank, and ending with a smiley face. The other was from Ethan. It was even more concise. It's Ethan. Before 2008 began, Ethan bought his first cell phone and sent his first text message. That night, he rode his bike at high speed through streets decorated with colored lights and red lanterns. The streets were full of people out for a stroll, admiring the decorations. As he passed them, he could hear their unrestrained laughter and loud conversations. But for the first time, strangely, he found that the sound of people talking wasn't so jarring. He could even tolerate it without his earbuds. The red lanterns with the words New Year on them didn't seem so ugly either. Even this holiday, which had previously held no meaning for him, suddenly became bearable, even something he kind of liked. Anything that brought him to Caleb could be classified as good. This was Ethan's most basic and honest understanding of the world. The red bicycle flew through the city center, following the fading lights, leaving the bustling downtown behind as the lights grew dimmer. As he approached the arched underpass that led to a steep downhill slope, a somewhat unfamiliar message tone cut through the growing silence. 6:52 p.m. Sender, Caleb. Okay, got it. He was at the top of the slope. Ethan, holding his phone, let go of the handlebars. As he plunged down at a seemingly out-of-control speed, the light from his phone screen cut through the darkness, a fierce, blazing trail. Ethan had done this countless times, but never before had it felt so exhilarating. His heart was pounding so violently that no amount of deep breathing could calm it. A screech of brakes brought the thrilling ride to an end. Ethan put his phone back in his pocket, propped his leg on the ground, and leaned against a row of bushes, looking back at the slope. The message tone sounded a second time. Ethan froze, wondering if it was just his imagination, a side effect of the adrenaline rush. Then, he quickly shoved both hands into his jacket pockets. There was a rustling sound. His right hand touched the cool metal of his phone, but his left hand touched a neatly folded piece of paper, his report card from the recent standardized test. The phone screen lit up again. Did you get a phone? Noah's arrival seemed to give Sarah a new purpose in life. Caleb watched as she went into a cooking frenzy, as if determined to make every one of her signature dishes for Noah in the span of 3 days. At the dinner table, Caleb was reduced to exchanging glances with Lily as they watched their mother pile all the best dishes in front of Noah. Lily, with her delicate health, wasn't completely ignored. She received a few choice morsels of her favorite foods. But Caleb had to make do with whatever was left over. On the last morning of the holiday, Noah, having just washed his face, stood in the bedroom, patting his stomach and asking Caleb if it was normal to gain weight in just 2 days. Normal, Caleb nodded. You were eating spare ribs at 10 o'clock last night. How could you not gain weight? Noah smiled, a little embarrassed. Your mom is a really good cook. Then you should come more often. Caleb folded the financial newspaper he was reading and stood up with a smile. She really likes you. My dad does too. They both like kids who are well-behaved and obedient like you. Caleb and Noah had been classmates as undergrads and roommates for nearly 6 months. He rarely saw Noah go out with friends. His life revolved almost entirely around his studies and research. Noah's advisor was a titan in their field, the kind of person who seemed completely obsessed with his work. Caleb had been to his office twice, and each time, the professor was disheveled, staring at his computer, typing away. Caleb had struggled to get his attention. The professor was oblivious to anything outside of his work. If you tried to talk to him about anything other than research, he would just give you a blank look and say he didn't know. The professor's image and demeanor had left a deep impression on Caleb, and he genuinely worried that Noah would end up like him one day. While the professional achievements were certainly respectable, the lifestyle was concerning. With no plans for the day, Caleb casually asked Noah what he wanted to do on their last day. Noah thought seriously for a moment and then said he didn't know. This was exactly what Caleb had expected, so he had to resort to his backup plan. Let's just go out and walk around. At his suggestion, Noah suddenly remembered. Oh right, I want to buy a jacket. This made Caleb laugh. I've never seen you go shopping in Philly. You came all the way here to go to the mall? There's too much trouble in Philly. To get to a mall, you have to take the subway or bus for half a day. And if you don't find what you're looking for, you have to travel a long way to get to the next one. That made sense. For someone with severe motion sickness like Noah, the ordeal of navigating the capital's complex transportation network was enough to overcome any desire to buy clothes. So Caleb took Noah to the largest mall in their town. Noah was indecisive, lost in a sea of down jackets. Caleb tried to help him, but he soon realized Noah had no opinion of his own. For every jacket he tried on, he would ask if it looked good. When Caleb asked him what he thought, Noah's response was always the same. I don't know. Caleb pulled him in front of a mirror. Just look at yourself. Do you think this jacket suits you? Compared to the gray one, which one looks better? Noah stared at his reflection for a long time, then shook his head at Caleb in the mirror. Caleb surrendered and began to seriously analyze the options for him, explaining which length was unflattering, which color made him look more energetic. Noah listened with a bewildered expression. Finally, he looked at Caleb through his thick glasses and pleaded, "Stop talking. Just tell me which one to buy, okay?" After a moment of silence, Caleb said to get the navy blue one with the hood. Noah let out a sigh of relief, immediately turned to the smiling sales associate, and said he'd take that one, then happily went to pay. Caleb watched him go, shaking his head, thinking that Noah really needed to find a girlfriend who was good at shopping and decisive. As he thought about these random things, he wandered around the store. He looked left, then right, and his gaze finally settled on a mid-length black parka. He looked at the jacket for a long time, then tilted his head, walked over, and draped it over his own shoulders. When Noah came back, he heard Caleb telling the sales associate that he'd take this one, in a size. Caleb paused, unsure whether to get a large or an extra large. "You're buying one too?" Noah asked, coming closer. Caleb nodded, holding the sleeve of the jacket to gauge its size. "It's for someone else." After buying the clothes, Noah saw that it was getting late and suggested they head back. But Caleb looked at his watch and said they should look around a little more. It wasn't until Caleb's phone buzzed that he looked at the message, a small smile playing on his lips, and told Noah it was time to go back for a feast. When they opened the front door, Noah was startled to see Lily holding a birthday cake. Caleb quickly put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, my birthday is tomorrow. We're just celebrating early because we have to leave tonight." After he explained, the first person to speak was not Noah, but Sarah, who said with some disapproval that you don't celebrate a birthday early. "It is what it is. An early celebration. It's fine." Caleb's father, David, laughed and patted his wife's shoulder, telling her to relax. "There's no need for all that superstition." The celebratory dinner was a happy one, but even as they were packing to leave that afternoon, Noah was still upset that Caleb hadn't told him about his birthday sooner. He was scolding Caleb for not giving him time to buy a gift, knowing how long it took him to choose things, when Lily knocked on the door and poked her head in. Seeing Caleb leaning against the desk, smiling at her, Lily pouted and handed him a paper bag. "It's all your fault," she grumbled. "You came back so suddenly that day. Completely ruined the surprise." "Okay, my fault," Caleb said, taking the bag with one hand and pulling her into a hug with the other. "Thanks, Lily." Lily said happy birthday again and then sat on the bed, hugging Caleb's stuffed lion pillow. Seeing Noah holding his new jacket, she asked excitedly if he'd bought new clothes. The young girl's enthusiasm for new clothes was genuine, even if they weren't hers. She got up, walked over to Noah, examined the jacket, and smiled. "I can tell my brother picked this out. It's totally his style. But it looks good on you too. You have more of a student vibe than my brother." At this, Lily suddenly stopped. She let out a short ah and turned around. "Oh right, Caleb. I almost forgot to tell you. That pink jacket, Ethan bought it for me." Hearing this, Caleb, who was in the middle of folding a shirt, froze, his body bent over. He repeated, surprised, "Ethan?" After Lily confirmed it, Caleb straightened up, turned around, and asked, confused, "Why would he buy you a jacket? I was out buying you a gift, remember? I couldn't find anything good at the local mall, so I went to the new shopping district." The new district was a pedestrian shopping street, recently built, that sprawled across a large area of the city. Lily had only been there once and wasn't familiar with the layout. After buying Caleb's gift that day, she looked up at the dense rows of shops and suddenly found herself completely lost. She wandered for a long time, only to realize she was just walking in circles around the same store. Just as she was starting to panic, she heard someone call her name. Ethan, dressed all in black, walked over, a slight frown on his face, and asked her what she was doing. "I was shopping," Lily's voice trembled slightly. "But after I was done, I couldn't find my way out. The streets here are so confusing." She had left after lunch when it was still warm, and she had been inside the mall so she hadn't felt cold. But after walking around for so long, the sun was starting to set. As she was trying to find her way, the temperature had dropped significantly, and a strong wind had picked up. Her thin fleece was no match for the cold. Lily hunched her shoulders and tucked her chin in, but she was still shivering and stamping her feet. The hand holding the paper bag was red and frozen. Lily was about to ask Ethan for directions when she heard the sound of a zipper. No, it's fine," Lily said quickly, seeing the thin t-shirt underneath Ethan's open jacket. "I'm okay. I'm not that cold." She tried to stop him from taking off his jacket for her, but in reality, Ethan had already stopped before she finished her sentence, zipping his jacket back up. Lily fell silent, wondering if she had been presumptuous. Then she heard Ethan say that his jacket smelled like smoke, and she shouldn't be around it. Lily was stunned. She looked up at Ethan's face. She saw him, perhaps out of frustration, not even bothering to zip up his jacket completely as he quickly scanned the area. When he spoke again, his voice was urgent. "Come with me. I'll take you home later." Ethan lowered his head and held out a hand to her. "Give me your bag. I'll carry it. It's okay." Give it to me. Her protests were cut off by those two simple words. Lily met Ethan's gaze. Because of the look in his eyes at that moment, her mind was still blank as she handed him the bag. After following him for a few steps, she realized that it wasn't just now. Although they hadn't made eye contact many times before, every time they did, it was just like this. His eyes were quiet but held a pure, unwavering intensity, as if when he looked at you, he could pull you into the depths of his own world. Even that time at the entrance to their building, when he had simply told her it was cold outside. Ethan took Lily to a coffee shop. When they went inside, Lily saw 3 people sitting together who all looked over at them. Sure enough, Ethan walked toward them. Well, look what we have here. A new girlfriend? You've been hiding her well. The guy with the brown hair spoke first, his mischievous smile and teasing tone making Lily hesitate. Ethan's reply was sharp. Shut up. He pulled out the chair next to the girl and motioned for Lily to sit, handing her the bag after she sat down. It was only then that Lily noticed the table was covered in textbooks, worksheets, and a notebook filled with someone's notes on their mistakes. You're studying here? Lily asked, surprised. Can you drink anything here? Should I get you something light? Perhaps because Ethan's voice was so gentle. The brown-haired guy was so shocked that the pen in his mouth slipped and hit his teeth. I can, Lily said, glancing at the menu board. A honey grapefruit tea would be fine. She added cautiously, a small one is enough. Ethan nodded and went to the counter to order. With Ethan gone, Lily didn't know the others at the table and didn't know what to say. She just gave them an awkward smile. Catching the brown-haired guy's gossipy look, she turned away and pretended to be engrossed in watching Ethan's back. To her surprise, as she watched him with her own ulterior motives, she suddenly found that the way he took money out of his pocket, the curve of his arm, the slight movement of his shoulder, and his casual stance, all came together to create a very handsome picture. Hey sis, the girl next to her suddenly spoke. She turned and saw the girl resting her chin on her hand, smiling at her, her expression clearly just as gossipy as the brown-haired guy's. Lily's nose itched, and she raised a hand to touch it. I'm Ava. The girl tapped the table with 2 fingers, looking very pleased. I never thought Ethan could be so gentle and considerate. The brown-haired guy made a gagging sound and dropped his pen on the table. Before the pen had even settled, Ava had turned to him, her expression changing instantly to one of deadpan annoyance. If you don't want to be here, then leave. The other boy, who was wearing square glasses, glanced at them, then, as if this was a common occurrence, went back to grading a worksheet. No, Lily said, waving her hands in the midst of this strange but harmonious atmosphere. We're neighbors. As she said this, Ethan returned. Ava smoothed her hair and casually started explaining a problem to the boy next to her. Ethan handed the honey grapefruit tea to Lily and told her to warm up for a bit, that he was stepping out for a minute and would be right back to take her home. Lily, holding the warm drink, nodded up at him. Before he left, Ethan glanced at the others at the table and told Lily that she didn't have to pay attention to them, to just ignore whatever they said. Lily, who had just choked on a large piece of grapefruit, thought that seemed a bit rude. When she looked up again, Ethan had already pushed open the door and stepped out into the cold wind. About 20 minutes later, the coffee shop door opened again. When Ethan returned, he was holding a large, pink and white striped shopping bag. Lily was at a complete loss, feeling like she had caused him a huge amount of trouble. As Ethan shook the jacket out of the bag, she was still stammering out disjointed phrases. The brown-haired guy was chattering away nonstop. Ethan just told him to shut up and went to the counter to have the tag cut off. So that's how Ethan bought me the jacket. Then he got a cab and took me home. But I didn't feel right telling you that day. Lily looked up at the ceiling, thinking for a moment. Maybe we should treat him to dinner or thank him in some other way. Caleb didn't answer right away. He turned back and stared at the shirt in front of him. After a moment, he slowly folded one side of the shirt toward the middle, then folded the sleeve back, carefully smoothing the edges. After he finished folding the shirt, he finally said, "I'll think about it." His voice was calm when he spoke to Lily, but he was far from feeling calm. Lily had asthma, and if she got sick, it could be much more serious than for a normal person. Once, when she was little, a bad cold had landed her in the intensive care unit. That was why their family was so protective of her. He looked at the jacket in the bag, wondering if it was a coincidence, or if he should be thankful that he had bought Ethan a coat. Regardless of the length of the holiday, the high school always started back on the evening of the last day, with students required to be back before the evening study session. Since Caleb hadn't driven home, Lily was thrilled. She called a friend and left early. Sarah watched her go and shook her head, telling Caleb that when he didn't drive her, she acted like a wild animal. She told her so many times to be careful when she walked, but she never listened. Her father, David, the eternal peacemaker, chimed in. "Oh, it's not that serious. A little bit of jumping around won't hurt her." "How is it not serious?" The doctor said no strenuous exercise, and to listen to her body, David interrupted. "You can't just forbid her from moving at all. The kid will go stir-crazy. Besides, a little bit of exercise is good for her." Sarah was always careful and cautious, and out of a desire to protect her daughter, she wanted to keep her in a bubble. But David thought she was often overly worried, which was counterproductive. Although they both acted out of love for their child, they had been arguing about Lily's health for years. "I am managing it. Don't you use my methods. The next time your leg hurts, don't tell me. Oh, now you're being unreasonable. How did this get back to me?" Noah, who had just peeled an orange, held it in his hand, unsure who to offer it to. Caleb walked over, took half, and shook his head at Noah, who was looking at him with a serious expression, signaling that this was normal and not to worry. He looked at the clock on the wall. 6:20. He picked up the bag with the parka and opened the front door. Ethan was at home, rummaging through drawers and cabinets, looking for his key. In his frustration, he suddenly heard a voice behind him. "Can't find it again?" He turned and saw Caleb leaning against the doorframe. The light in the hallway was dim, and half of Caleb's body was shrouded in shadow. "Caleb." He said his name. Caleb nodded. "Can't you just keep your key in one place?" Ethan's lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. He didn't have the habit, and he didn't intentionally lose it. He just never knew where he had casually tossed it, as if he had selective amnesia about the key the moment he stepped through the door. "Can I come in?" Ethan nodded. The state of the living room was exactly as Caleb had glimpsed it from the doorway. Women's clothes were scattered on the sofa. High heels lay haphazardly in various corners. There were no air-purifying plants, no humidifier. Even the clock on the wall had long since stopped at some forgotten time. Caleb turned his head slightly and saw the cluttered dining table, on which sat a